The marble foyer of my sister's Westchester mansion echoed with expensive laughter as 26 family members gathered for her engagement party. Crystal chandeliers cast perfect light over the crowd of successful relatives, their designer outfits and luxury accessories reflecting their shared assumption that wealth was something they had earned through talent and hard work. I stood near the grand staircase in my simple khakis and polo shirt, holding a glass of champagne that probably cost more than most people's weekly salary. My sister Amanda swept through the room in her custom Vera Wang dress, the massive engagement ring on her finger catching the light as she gestured dramatically to her friends. The wedding will be in Tuscany, naturally. Michael's family owns the most amazing vineyard estate there. Her fiancé Michael nodded from beside the marble fireplace, his Armani tuxedo impeccable as he discussed his hedge fund's latest acquisition with my uncle Robert. We closed on a $400 million portfolio last month. European markets are finally stabilizing. My cousin Jessica, Amanda's maid of honor, laughed as she sipped her Dom Pérignon. It's incredible how some people just have a natural talent for building wealth, unlike others who seem content with mediocrity. The comment was clearly directed at me. For the past 4 years, I'd been working as a freelance graphic designer from my modest apartment in Brooklyn, taking on small projects and living what they considered an unfocused lifestyle. What they didn't know was that the family financial support they constantly referenced actually flowed in the opposite direction. From carefully structured accounts I managed to their various expenses and lifestyle maintenance. David's always been the creative type, my mother said with that familiar tone of resigned disappointment. Very different from Amanda's business sense and networking abilities. My brother-in-law Tom, Jessica's husband, raised his wine glass from his position near the baby grand piano. To different definitions of success. Some people build empires, others design logos for coffee shops. The laughter that followed stung, but I'd learned years ago to keep my expression neutral. What they saw as my lack of ambition was actually my choice to work on projects I enjoyed while managing the complex financial structures that kept their lifestyles functioning. The quarterly reports from my wealth management team showed growth rates they couldn't have imagined, but discussions about boring investment details had always been dismissed as inappropriate for social gatherings. Amanda's voice cut through the ambient conversation as she tapped her champagne flute with a silver spoon. Before we continue celebrating, I think we need to address something as a family. The room gradually quieted as relatives sensed the shift in atmosphere. Jessica moved closer to Amanda, her face bright with anticipation of being included in family leadership. Tom positioned himself strategically near the fireplace, clearly expecting to support whatever announcement was coming. David, Amanda called out, her voice carrying that authoritative tone she'd perfected in business school. Come here, please. I walked across the marble floor, my simple outfit feeling even more conspicuous among the designer fashion surrounding me. The family formed a loose semicircle like shareholders at an annual meeting. Your lifestyle choices over the past few years have been concerning, Amanda began, her voice taking on the professional cadence she used during board presentations. While the rest of us have built careers and contributed to family success, you've chosen a path that frankly requires constant financial support. My Aunt Catherine nodded approvingly from her seat on the leather sofa. We've all been patient, hoping you'd eventually show some business initiative or financial responsibility. But patience has reasonable limits, Jessica added, her voice carrying false sweetness. Family resources should go to family members who multiply them, not drain them. Uncle Robert stepped forward, his expression serious but his eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of delivering tough love. We've all contributed to maintaining the family's financial stability. You've been, well, the opposite of helpful. I could see where this conversation was heading, but I remained silent, waiting for Amanda to make her point clear. The family has been covering your rent, your car payments, your health insurance, and basically all your living expenses, Amanda continued, her voice rising to ensure everyone could hear her decisive leadership. But we've reached a unanimous decision. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down discreetly at the notification. Monthly family allowance transfers scheduled. $180,247 total across 26 accounts. Approve all payments? Wire transfers pending. Chase private client services. So we're cutting you off, Amanda announced, her champagne glass raised like a toast to fiscal responsibility. Effective immediately, no more family financial support. It's time you learned to stand on your own financially. The family murmured their approval, several cousins nodding as if this were a long overdue business decision. Jessica smiled triumphantly, while Tom actually started a small round of applause for Amanda's decisive action. Stop depending on us financially, Amanda snapped angrily, her voice echoing off the marble walls. We're done enabling your lack of ambition. My phone chimed again with a text from my private banker. Monthly family allowances total $180,000. Approve? I looked up from my phone and simply nodded, the small gesture barely noticeable in the room full of celebrating relatives. The effect was immediate and devastating. Around the room, family members' phones began buzzing simultaneously. I watched as confident expressions shifted to confusion, then growing alarm as they read their banking notifications. Amanda's triumphant smile faltered as she stared at her phone screen. What is this? Jessica had gone completely pale, her champagne glass trembling in her hand as she scrolled through what appeared to be banking alerts. Tom was frantically tapping his phone screen, his face cycling through confusion and growing panic. Uncle Robert's voice cracked as he looked up from his device. My mortgage payment. It says it's been suspended. Mine too, Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible in the suddenly quiet mansion. My phone rang immediately, the ringtone cutting through their growing panic. The caller ID showed, Chase Private Client Wealth Management Division. Excuse me, I said quietly, answering the call. Good evening, Patricia. Mr. Williams, came the familiar voice of my wealth advisor through the speaker, her professional tone clearly audible in the silent room. I'm calling about the family allowance transfers. Several accounts are showing suspended payments. Should I reinstate the monthly distributions? The mansion had gone completely silent. Even the catered staff seemed to have stopped moving as 26 family members stared at me with growing horror. Actually, Patricia, there's been a family meeting tonight with some important decisions about financial independence. Could you explain the current account structure for everyone present? Of course, sir. You maintain individual allowance accounts for 26 family members, totaling approximately $180,000 in monthly transfers. These cover housing, vehicle payments, insurance, and lifestyle maintenance for your relatives. Amanda's engagement ring caught the light as her hand shook uncontrollably. She was staring at me like I'd suddenly grown a second head, her confident demeanor completely shattered. And what happens if I choose to modify these allowances? I asked, watching as comprehension slowly dawned on 26 faces around me. You have complete discretionary authority over all payments. You can adjust, suspend, or redirect any transfers at any time. The accounts are structured as gifts from your primary holdings, so there are no legal obligations to continue any payments. Michael, Amanda's fiancé, made a choking sound. Holdings? What holdings? My phone buzzed with another call from my investment advisor at Goldman Sachs. Mr. Williams, his voice came through clearly in the now silent room. The real estate portfolio needs quarterly review. The family property investments have appreciated to $47 million total value. Should we continue the automatic rent and mortgage coverage for your relatives? Tom had actually sat down on the marble floor, his legs apparently unable to support him as the reality sank in. Jessica was openly crying, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks as she realized the implications. Hold all automatic payments for now, David. I'll review the portfolio allocations and call you tomorrow with new instructions. Understood, sir. Should I also suspend the credit card accounts we maintain for family members? The monthly limits total $85,000 across all cards. The room erupted in desperate voices, but this time the panic was complete and existential. These weren't people discovering they'd been wrong about someone. These were people discovering they'd just voted to eliminate their own financial lifeline. Wait, you can't cut us off. Amanda's voice rose to a shriek as she lunged toward me, her designer dress rustling as she reached out with trembling hands. This is impossible. Michael shouted, his face turning red as he pointed an accusatory finger at me. You're a freelance graphic designer. We never knew. Jessica's voice cracked with desperation as she grabbed my arm, her perfect manicure digging into my shirt sleeve. You should have told us. Several cousins called out simultaneously, their voices creating chaos in the elegant foyer. Uncle Robert was frantically calling someone on his phone, probably his bank, while other family members whispered in growing terror about mortgage payments due next week and credit card bills they couldn't cover. "Please," my mother finally whispered from her position near the grand piano. Her voice was barely audible, but in the complete quiet of the mansion, everyone heard her desperate plea. I looked around the room at 26 people who had spent years treating me like a financial burden, a family charity case whose lack of ambition embarrassed them at social functions. Their designer clothes, their luxury cars in the circular driveway, their expensive homes. All of it funded by monthly allowances I had been approving while they dismissed me as someone who would never amount to anything. "You're right about financial independence," I said calmly. "Everyone should learn to stand on their own." I walked toward the mansion's main entrance, my simple outfit somehow feeling more appropriate now than all the designer fashion surrounding me. "Where are you going?" Amanda called after me, her voice desperate and pleading in a way I'd never heard before. "Home. To my apartment. The building I own in Brooklyn." I paused at the doorway and looked back at the family gathered in Amanda's mansion, the same mansion whose mortgage I had been paying for 3 years. "Don't worry about the engagement party cleanup. I'll make sure the catering staff gets paid tonight. After that, you might want to start budgeting for your own celebrations." As I walked to my car, a modest Subaru that they'd always mocked as proof of my financial limitations, I could hear the frantic conversations erupting behind me. 26 family members suddenly realizing that the person they'd just cut off for being financially dependent actually controlled every dollar they took for granted. My phone immediately began buzzing with text messages. "Please call me back immediately. We need to discuss this. Amanda. This is crazy. You can't be serious about cutting us off. Tom. I'm sorry for what I said. Please don't do anything drastic. Jessica. We had no idea about your financial situation. Please forgive us. Uncle Robert." I turned off my phone and drove through the Westchester streets toward the highway. As I headed back to Brooklyn, I smiled thinking about tomorrow's family calls. For the first time in 4 years, when we discussed financial responsibility and family support, they'd be very interested in my perspective on what independence really meant. The monthly allowances could wait. After years of funding their lifestyles while enduring their lectures about financial maturity, I had all the time in the world to decide what standing on your own actually looked like, for all of us.